I wish to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. It's a pleasure for me to be with you here this afternoon. I'm joined today by my counsel, Sheila Block, who will be able to assist with any technical points and questions. Our democracy is built on trust. Trust in our institutions, our governments, and our fellow Canadians. Unfortunately, recent allegations of foreign interference have threatened that trust, raising legitimate questions and also undermining our confidence in our government's ability or willingness to protect our democracy. Canadians deserve forthright answers about the impact of foreign interference and whether the government has failed to act appropriately. To be able to make any improvements to the systems that protect our democracy, we must first answer who knew what, when they knew it, and crucially, what was done regarding these recent allegations. This is the focus of my first report.
Over the past 2 months, I have reviewed all the relevant facts and materials related to these allegations. This includes original source intelligence files. Additionally, I have interviewed the most senior intelligence officials and elected officials.
Level of access. I have worked with the security agencies to disclose to Canadians as much as I responsibly and possibly can in my report, more than has been done before. Based on my review, I have reached 5 clear conclusions. First, foreign governments are undoubtedly attempting to influence candidates and voters in Canada. Foreign interference is a real and growing threat, and more remains to be done promptly to strengthen our capacity to detect, deter, and counter foreign interference in elections. Second, when viewed in full context with all of the relevant intelligence, several leaked materials that raised legitimate questions turn out to have been misconstrued in some media reporting, presumably because of the lack of this context. Third, I have identified serious shortcomings in the way intelligence is communicated and processed from security agencies through to government. Fourth, a further public process is required, but there should not and need not be a separate formal public inquiry. A public inquiry examining the leaked materials could not be undertaken in public, given the sensitivity of the intelligence. However, public hearings on the serious governance and policy issues identified to date should and will be held at the earliest possible date as part of the second phase of my mandate. Finally, I recognize this report's conclusions would be met with skepticism by some, especially by those who in good faith have worked to raise legitimate questions around these issues. The challenge is this: what has allowed me to determine whether there has in fact been interference cannot be disclosed publicly. A public review of classified intelligence simply cannot be done. Therefore, fifth, I recommend the Prime Minister invite the 2 oversight committees on national security, NSICOP and INSIRA, to review my conclusions and provide them with all supporting materials, including an annex which contains the classified information. If they disagree with my conclusions, they should say that. Le défi est le suivant. Ce qui
What allowed me to determine whether there had actually been interference cannot be disclosed in public. A public review of classified intelligence simply cannot be done. Therefore, and fifth, I recommend that the Prime Minister invite the two oversight committees on national security to review my conclusions and provide them with all supporting materials, including an annex which contains the classified information. If they disagree with my conclusions, they should say that publicly.
To the parliamentarians who are already members of NSICOP, I encourage the Prime Minister to invite the leaders of the three major opposition parties to join that process personally so they can assess for themselves the intelligence and my conclusions. This is a necessary step in transparency and accountability to provide Canadians confidence in my conclusions. My review has shown that common techniques of foreign interference include cyber attacks, online influence campaigns, disinformation, and the exploitation of human relationships. Fortunately, measures put in place by our governments have been largely successful. The elections of 2019 and 2021 were well protected by sophisticated mechanisms, and there is no basis to lack confidence in those results. Les élections de 2019.
The elections of 2019 and 2021 were well protected by sophisticated mechanisms, and there is no basis to lack confidence in those results. At the same time, Canada must remain vigilant against this threat and must work urgently to strengthen our capacity to detect, deter, and counter this threat to our democracy.
The recent allegations of foreign interference in media reports have amplified public concern around these issues and are a central component of my first report. They raise legitimate questions which deserve complete answers. Much of what has been reported has been based on limited and partial intelligence. That reporting has been made without the benefit of the full context provided by all relevant materials. Experienced, intelligent professionals understand that individual pieces of intelligence must be viewed with considerable skepticism. It is extremely rare to draw conclusions, much less take action, from a single intelligence report. Each piece of intelligence is a brushstroke to paint a broader picture. Only upon seeing the full picture, with the benefit of all relevant intelligence, can one conclude that much of the reported intelligence has been misconstrued in media reports, presumably because of this lack of context in these instances. In some cases, the materials I reviewed tell a very different story than what has been reported to date. Foreign interference is not usually embodied in discrete, one-off pieces of intelligence. It cannot be dealt with on a one-off look what I found basis. The limited leaked intelligence and subsequent reporting have led to misapprehensions relating to incidents that are alleged to have occurred in the 2019 and 2021 elections. Moreover, I have found no examples of ministers, the Prime Minister, or their offices knowingly or negligently failing to act on intelligence, advice, or recommendations on the issues I have investigated related to the 2019 and 2021 elections. However, I did find that there are significant and unacceptable gaps in the machinery of government. Les renseignements sont décentralisés.
Intelligence is decentralized and in many instances not well communicated. It is not properly filtered to key decision makers, and the accountability mechanisms in place are not sufficient. This is not just a problem at the political level. The information flow between the security agencies and the departments they serve is also not well tracked. These are all serious impediments to the efficient management of information and reviews.
Another central piece of my mandate and a requirement of this first report was to determine if a separate public inquiry or public process is required to investigate foreign interference in our democracy. There have been widespread calls for a public inquiry from media, opposition parties, and Parliament through a motion passed in the House of Commons. When I began this process, I thought I would come to the same conclusion, that I would recommend a public inquiry. Well, it would have been an easy choice. It would not be the correct one. Une enquête publique distincte.
A separate public inquiry will simply not deliver the level of transparency and urgency Canadians expect. The intelligence I have reviewed is and must remain secret. As a result, the reality is any credible public inquiry would not be public at all.
Inquiry will simply not deliver the level of transparency and urgency Canadians expect. The intelligence I have reviewed is and must remain secret. As a result, the reality is any credible public inquiry would not be public at all. In contrast, by conducting a thorough review of my conclusions and recommendations, our Intelligence Oversight Committees, NSICOP and NSIRA, have the opportunity and the duty to help restore Canadians' trust in our democratic institutions. That said, a public process is warranted to address the parts of my mandate that are not classified. Canadians rightly have questions and deserve to be engaged fully in my work. In the next stage of my mandate, I will conduct public hearings to hear from Canadians about the numerous policy questions my work has raised. Cela comprendra des audiences publiques.
Importantly, this will include public hearings to learn from diaspora community members and experts in national security and international relations. During this process, Canadians will also have the opportunity to hear firsthand from senior national security officials in public.
In the second phase of my work, I intend to tackle a number of critical issues. This includes concerns of diaspora communities and individuals about foreign interference. I will investigate the challenge of using classified intelligence in law enforcement and how it might be addressed. I will review the role and structure of NSICOP and whether it can be strengthened. I will suggest amendments to the CSIS Act that might assist in fighting foreign interference. I will investigate various issues with the machinery of government, including processes for funneling intelligence to top officials, more effective tracking protocols, and clearer lines of responsibility. I will also review the merits of a government-led process for declassification of information to enhance transparency and look at the case for a National Security Committee of Cabinet. And I will examine the issue of how the government deals with threats against elected officials. Canadians need to understand the threat this issue presents and the mechanisms needed to address it. Je voudrais conclure.
I want to conclude by thanking my team, who has worked tirelessly over these past 2 months to review mountains of evidence and intelligence, while also conducting a wide array of interviews.
By October of this year, with a particular focus on providing recommendations to address the serious gaps identified in this report and improve Canada's capacity to detect, deter, and combat foreign interference. So thank you all for your time and attention this afternoon, and I would be happy to take your questions.